Hello family. Welcome to Brandon Tales, your home for gripping African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now sit back and enjoy the drama. Damian Drake pushed open the glass door of La Belle Espresso with measured calm, though his pulse fluttered beneath the tailored fabric of his suit. The morning sun slanted low through the cafe windows, catching motes of dust in the air and painting everything in soft gold. He inhaled the rich scent of freshly ground beans, cinnamon, and steamed milk, but his gaze was fixed on the woman seated by the window. Reyna Voss, the girl whose sharp tongue and fierce glare had made his high school years a living crucible. He remembered her, clad in the black leather jacket he'd secretly coveted, arms crossed, chin tilted too high, eyes sparking with mischief or disdain, he could never tell which. Today, she wore an oversized gray hoodie that swallowed her slender frame and jeans faded to threads. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, a stray curl escaping to brush her temple. She looked tired, and he was here to change that. He approached, his reflection fractured in the glass tabletop, and set a plain white mug across from her without asking permission. She looked up, blinked, and her eyes widened in recognition. "Damian Drake," she said, voice cool as iced water. "I'd tell you to go away, but I'm not sure you know how." He offered a half-smile. "I've changed my habits since graduation." He slid into the seat. Around them, the cafe buzzed with laptops, hushed conversations, the hiss of espresso machines. "Reyna, I need your help." She leaned back, brow arching. "My help? What? Acrylic paints? Graffiti tags?" He folded his hands. "A surrogacy arrangement." Her eyebrows shot up in silent punctuation. "You want me to carry your child?" He nodded, voice firm. "I have exactly 12 months to provide a biological heir. My father's trust, $15 billion worth, hinges on it. Agencies are too slow. I need someone who matches genetically. You're the perfect match." She stared at him as if he'd sprouted antlers. "Perfect match is the girl who made fun of your receding hairline in geometry class." He winced, recalling her sharp joke. "Nice math hair, Drake. Did you solve the problem of confidence yet?" But his lips stayed curved in a polite grin. "People change." Her laughter was brittle. "That's rich coming from the billionaire who reportedly bulldozed half a city block to build his empire." He winced again. "Hyperbole." She crossed her arms, hoodie sleeves sliding down. "This is lunacy. Why on earth would I agree?" He retrieved a sealed envelope from his inner jacket pocket and laid it in front of her. $2.5 million, plus health coverage, plus... He paused, sincerity softening his tone. "Plus anonymity. You'd be free to paint, to live your life. Strictly medical. No questions, no emotional entanglements." Her gaze flitted from the envelope to his face. "And you think money buys peace of mind?" He held her gaze. "I think money buys choice. And right now, you have every choice in the world." She bit her lip, fiddling with a frayed hem. He watched the steady rise and fall of her chest. Beneath her tough armor, he saw exhaustion and something like hope. "Let me see the contract," she said abruptly. He handed her a slim folder. She skimmed through clauses, medical procedures, privacy agreements, payment schedules. She paused at the signature line, traced it with a fingertip. "What if I say no?" His lips flattened. "Then I'll keep looking, and you'll be out 2 hours of your life." She closed the folder with a snap and fixed him with a challenging stare. "Give me 24 hours." He nodded. "Meet me here tomorrow at 10. If you decide yes, sign. If no, I'll leave you in peace." She uncrossed her legs and stood, hoodie sliding back into place. "Peace is overrated." She tucked the folder under her arm and strode out, each step a rebuke. Damian watched her go, heart thudding in his chest. The next morning, Damian arrived 15 minutes early. Reyna was already there, feet up on the vinyl seat, head bent over the folder. She looked up, eyes sharp. "I read it," she said. "You promise it's medical only?" He exhaled. "Strictly medical." She picked up a pen, hesitated, and then signed. The pen clicked like a starting pistol. A surge of triumph, and something else, unfamiliar, flared through him. He offered his hand. "Thank you." She shrugged, sliding the folder into her backpack. "Don't expect a thank you text." She turned to leave. He caught her wrist, gentle but insistent. "Wait." She froze. He cleared his throat. "There's one more clause." That dodge got her to look back. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial containing her blood sample. "Match confirmed." He held it up. "Perfect. You're not only my only choice, you're the only one who could do this." Her breath caught. Only me?" He met her eyes, softer now. "Only you, Reyna Voss." She blinked, a flush rising beneath her dark skin. She laced her fingers around the vial. "Don't call me that." He smiled. "It sounds better than just contract." 2 days later, Reyna arrived at Damien's estate, stepping onto a manicured lawn that stretched like a green ocean to a distant marble mansion. She tapped her bag strap, hesitated at the ornate front door, then rang the bell. The door opened to reveal Damien in a crisp white lab coat, an image of clinical precision. "Welcome," he said, stepping aside. "Dr. Macklin will guide you through orientation." She crossed the foyer, eyeing family portraits, men in severe jackets, women in diamonds, all smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. She forced herself to inhale steadily. This was business. Nothing more. In the consultation room, a kindly nurse offered her water. Damien watched from the doorway, arms folded. A video played on the wall, detailing safety protocols, diet guidelines, rest schedules. Reyna filled out forms as if marking off a to-do list, each circle she ticked resonating in the quiet room. When she finished, she stood. Damien approached. "First appointment tomorrow morning at 8. In the meantime," he hesitated, "if you need anything." She cut him off. "I need a good cup of coffee." He stifled a laugh. "Consider it ordered." That night, Damien sat alone in his high-rise office, the city sprawled below in a grid of lights. He stared at the folder on his desk, her signature bleeding triumphantly across the page. He recalled the way her eyes had flicked over the clauses, the tension in her jaw before she signed. He felt a tug of respect, a spark of something more. He tapped the contract with a fingertip. "She's a business arrangement," he reminded himself. Nothing more. Yet memories intruded, the flash of her smile when he joked about Kofi, the tremor in her voice when he confirmed the blood match, the stubborn set of her shoulders in that sterile room. He closed his eyes. Stay detached. But his pulse whispered otherwise. Morning arrived in a soft haze. Damien found Reyna in the sunroom, sipping coffee, sketchbook in hand. She drew a minimalist line series, undulating curves that spoke of movement, life. He settled into the chair opposite, watching the plume of steam spiral from her mug. "Your sketches are alive," he said. She glanced up, expression guarded. "Art has to breathe, Mr. Drake. Unlike contracts, it can't be controlled." He leaned forward. "I'd like to learn, to see how you do it." She smirked. "You've built empires. You're not exactly clueless." He chuckled. "But I've never drawn a line." She closed her sketchbook. Lesson 1. There's freedom in imperfection. He waited for her to elaborate, but she only sipped her coffee, gaze drifting to the garden beyond. He studied her high cheekbones, the determined tilt of her head, the way her hair caught light. Imperfection. She was beautiful, flawed, living. He realized, with a start, that the contract on his desk was more than just paper. It was a bridge between two lives he had spent 25 years trying to control, but now, perhaps, he had to surrender some control to honor it. He slid a fresh sheet of sketch paper toward her. "Teach me." She raised an eyebrow. "This is strictly medical supervision, Billionaire. I don't teach for free." He met her challenge. 2 extra 100,000. She laughed, genuine rich. "Deal." As she guided his hesitant hand, drawing a shaky curve that he insisted was almost perfect, he realized the true terms of their arrangement were shifting. And for the first time in his life, he welcomed the uncertainty. That night, Damien returned to the office and locked the contract away. He pulled out a blank page and wrote a single sentence at the top: enemies. Riches. A baby deal. Then he underlined it twice and set it aside. Tomorrow he'd sign her medical consent. Tomorrow he'd begin a process neither of them could predict, and neither of them could prepare for what came next. Because on the day Reyna Voss agreed to carry his child, Damian Drake discovered that even billionaires can fall, especially when they can't help but follow their heart. Reyna stood on the threshold of Damian's sprawling estate, suitcase in hand, caught between dread and determination. The wrought iron gates had swung shut behind her with a decisive clang that echoed through the manicured courtyard. She inhaled deep, tasting the sharp tang of freshly cut grass and polished stone. This was his world now, every corridor lined with family portraits, every chandelier dripping crystal reflections. She squared her shoulders. No more running. Inside, Damian waited in the grand foyer, arms crossed over a crisp white shirt. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a spark of anticipation. "Welcome," he said, voice steady. "Dinner in 30 minutes. Follow me to your suite, and we'll go over the schedule." Reyna nodded once, tight-lipped. She followed him up a sweeping staircase of marble, each step echoing beneath her boots. The guest suite lay at the end of a long corridor, walls hung with abstract art, floors carpeted in plush ivory. He gestured to the room. "Everything you need is here: gym access, private kitchen, your own bathroom. Medical staff are on call. Rules are few: keep your appointments, eat as advised, rest when required. And please, no unauthorized guests." She eyed him coolly. "Understood. But I'm not a child, Drake. I don't need a list of do's and don'ts." His lip quirked. "Fair enough. Consider it guidance, not commands." At dinner, Reyna found the dining room set for two: sleek black table, silver flatware, flickering candles. He had ordered her favorite, spicy jollof rice with grilled tilapia. The aroma made her stomach twist in gratitude and nerves. She lifted her fork. "You remembered." He inclined his head. "I asked Dr. Macklin for your preferences." She ate slowly, eyes flickering to his plate of lean chicken breast and steamed vegetables. Not very inviting. He met her gaze over the candlelight. "I eat for fuel. You for pleasure." The words hung between them. She bristled, but something in his tone sounded almost wistful. She swallowed. Can't fault someone for efficiency. After dinner, she wandered the halls to clear her head. Portraits of Drake's past glared down, stern faces in tailored suits, all achievement and expectation. She paused before an oil painting of a young boy and girl playing by a river. She traced her finger along the gilded frame. "Is that you and your sister?" she asked, turning to see Damian behind her. He nodded, voice soft. "She drowned when we were 12. I blamed myself for years." She swallowed a lump. His voice was low, haunted. "Sorry." He shook his head. "That's chapter 2 in my autobiography of regret." Reyna studied him, surprised by genuine vulnerability. "Chapter 3 onward is redemption," she murmured. He managed a small smile. "Perhaps." The next morning, a nurse swept into her suite at 8 sharp. Reyna followed suit in silence: blood draw, vitals, ultrasound prep. Damian watched from the doorway, concern in his stance. Each beep of the monitor, each sting of the needle, made her flinch. He stepped forward, voice gentle: "Breathe." His hand hovered, then rested on her shoulder. She breathed and let the warmth of his palm steady her. Later, he escorted her to the nursery, a pastel dream of ivory and sage. Reyna ran her fingers over a vintage crib and piles of hand-knit blankets. "This is perfect," she said, voice soft. He watched her with an intensity that made her heart flutter and chest tighten. "For her," he said simply. Fueled by a sudden urge, Reyna fetched her sketchbook and began to draw the nursery in charcoal, every curve of the window, every shadow under the crib. Damian lingered by the doorway. When she looked up, he asked quietly, "May I?" She nodded, scooting over. He sat beside her, awkward at first, pencil in hand. He attempted a line, stiff, uncertain. Reyna guided his wrist. Together they sketched. The tension between them softened in the simple act of creation. That evening, they sat in the private screening room, her curled on the plush couch, him perched on an armchair. A storm rumbled outside, and the rain began in earnest. They argued over movie choice until she blindsided him by picking a horror film. "Seriously?" he groaned. "You want to jump at every shadow in my house?" She held up the remote. "I like my adrenaline tailored." He relented, pausing as thunder cracked. Midway through a particularly tense scene, the lights flickered and died. The projector sputtered out. Silence blanketed them. Reyna groaned, then laughed. "Great. Now it's just us and the storm." He stood, moving to light a lamp, but she slipped off the couch, arms sliding around his waist. "Stay," she whispered, pressing her face into his chest as the thunder rattled the windows. He froze, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as if she might disappear. Her breath caught. "Why do you smell like my favorite memory?" she whispered, voice trembling in the dark. He inhaled her hair, pressed his forehead to hers. "Because I'm finally home," he murmured. And in that raw, sudden intersection of two walls colliding, old animosity and new understanding, they discovered that the rules they thought would govern their arrangement were already breaking. The ultrasound room was hushed save for the rhythmic hum of machinery and the muted whoosh of air conditioning. Reyna lay on the examination table, oversized hoodie pooled around her waist, and loose jeans unbuttoned for access. Damien stood close by, his broad shoulders nearly filling the small space. He reached for her hand and squeezed it once, a gesture both grounding and tender. Dr. Macklin, a kindly woman with gentle eyes and steady hands, applied a cool gel to Reyna's abdomen. "Ready?" she asked, her voice soft but professional. Reyna swallowed hard and nodded. Damien's thumb brushed over the back of her hand, and she let her fingers enfold his, drawing comfort from the warmth of his palm. The probe slid slowly, and the screen flickered to life. Black and white shapes danced before them, like abstract art shifting under the technician's hand. Then, just as hope and trepidation tangled in Reyna's chest, a clear flicker pulsed on the screen. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Macklin announced, eyes bright. "Strong and steady." A sudden silence fell, broken only by the gentle thump-thump-thump of their child's life force. Reyna's breath caught in her throat, and she pressed a hand to her heart as if to check the reality of what she felt. Damien exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd held. "That's our baby," he whispered, voice husky. Reyna's eyes glistened as tears welled. "She's so small." Dr. Macklin captured a few more images, then wiped her hands free of gel. "Everything looks perfect. I'll have these printed for you both." They watched the screen until the flicker faded, then followed Dr. Macklin out. In the adjacent consultation room, Reyna accepted printed black and white ultrasound photos. She traced the grainy outline of their daughter with a fingertip. "Amara," she breathed, voice trembling. Damien leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Amara," he repeated, testing the name. "It suits her." Reyna met his eyes, and in that gaze she saw something she hadn't expected, vulnerability mingled with fierce devotion. Her pulse fluttered anew. She set the photos on the counter and turned to face him fully. "Thank you for being here." He stepped forward, concern softening his features. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Chair squeaking, she eased herself down and patted his lap. "Sit," she insisted. He did, stacking his broad knees and offering her a place to perch. She curled her legs to one side, facing him. They sat in companionable silence for a heartbeat, then Reyna cleared her throat. "I didn't expect to feel this." She gestured between them. "Everything." Damien's gaze tracked her line of sight, her hand on his thigh, the ultrasound on the counter, the framed contract tucked away in her bag. "I didn't either," he admitted softly. "I thought this would be purely transactional." He paused, voice earnest. "But now, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Reyna's breath hitched. She searched his eyes. "Damien, it's complicated." He inclined his head. "Yes. But some of the best things in life are." She felt a rush of warmth at his admission, but a tremor of fear followed. She'd built walls around her heart, brick by careful brick. Letting them fall, even a little, made her vulnerable beyond comfort. She cleared her throat. "We should go. I need to rest and you have work." She offered a polite smile. He stood and slipped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her into a gentle side hug. "Rest," he murmured in her ear. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything." Alone in her suite, Reyna lay on the bed, ultrasound photos clasped to her chest. She studied the flickering shadows of the ceiling fan, mind spinning. Her walls were trembling, and the thought both thrilled and terrified her. That evening, Damien returned to the suite with a tray, herbal tea, whole grain crackers, a warm lotion for nausea. Reyna accepted the cup, lips curving into a genuine smile for the first time in days. He perched on a stool beside her bed. "How are you feeling?" She settled against the pillows. "Like my insides are auditioning for a drum solo." She tilted her head back, eyes closed. "Is it normal to ache for someone you barely know?" He leaned forward. "More normal than you think." His fingers found hers, intertwining gently. "We're both learning new terrain." She opened her eyes, searching him. "Promise me something?" He waited, silent. "Don't fall for me," she said softly, voice resolute despite the tremble. "Not now, not ever." His brow furrowed in concern. "Why would you say that?" She shrugged, looking away. "Because I'll leave after this. I won't stick around for a messy fallout." Her voice cracked like fine porcelain. "I can't handle heartbreak again." He drew a shaky breath. "If you leave, I'll let you. But I can't promise not to care." She swallowed. Tears burned behind her eyes. "That's not fair." He brushed a tear from her cheek, gentle as a whisper. "Nothing about this is fair. But I'm in over my head, completely." She swallowed, her heart pounding. "I can't lose you." He drew his hand back to her cheek, thumb grazing her skin. "You're not going to lose me." His voice was firm, unwavering. "No matter what." Their eyes locked. The space between them crackled with tension and unspoken longing. Her breath caught, and he leaned in, slowly, deliberately. At the threshold of their first kiss, she closed her eyes, and before lips met, she pulled away, leaving him suspended in anticipation. "I said don't fall," she whispered, voice raw. "I won't survive it." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't care if it kills me." The next morning, she awoke to the scent of toast and coffee. Damien stood at the kitchenette counter, apron tied around his waist, pouring milk into a cereal bowl. "Morning," she murmured from the doorway, hair mussed, hood resting on her shoulders. He turned, offering a warm smile. "I made you breakfast." He gestured to the tray on the table, avocado toast, fresh fruit, a small dish of ginger tea. She crossed the room and sat, hands wrapped around the mug. "You cook?" He shrugged, tossing cereal into a bowl. "I know the basics." She tasted a piece of toast, and her eyes widened. "This is good." He grinned, hair falling over his brow. "I'm good at whatever I put my mind to." She laughed softly, tension easing. They ate in companionable silence until he cleared his throat. "I have a meeting at noon, boardroom. Want to join?" She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Watch you run a billion-dollar company?" He straightened his tie, amused. "You'll learn a lot, and I could use your perspective." She hesitated, then smiled. "Deal. But I get to critique your management style." He laughed. "I wouldn't have it any other way." In the glass-walled boardroom, directors assembled around a polished oak table. Reyna slipped into a seat beside Damien, notebook in hand. The CEO did his customary greeting, but when he introduced Reyna as our prospective mother and creative consultant, the room stirred with surprised interest. Reyna bristled but offered a polite nod. As the meeting commenced, quarterly earnings, expansion plans, risk assessments, she jotted notes. When a senior director launched into dry projections, she raised a hand. All eyes turned her way. "If I may," she said, voice steady, "these numbers are impressive, but they don't address workforce morale. If you invest in employee wellness, even small perks, you'll see productivity gains that bolster these projections." Damien's gaze flicked to her, a spark of pride in his eyes. The directors exchanged glances, and after a pause, the CFO nodded. A valid point. We'll examine potential initiatives. Reyna sat back, heart racing with exhilaration. Damien offered an approving nod. After the meeting, she slipped her notebook into her bag, cheeks flushed. That was incredible, he said as they exited the boardroom. She shrugged, deflecting. Just telling it like I see it. He smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You have a gift. Her breath caught. Thanks. That night, thunder rolled in again, but this time they watched from the veranda, wrapped in blankets. Reyna held her hand to her belly, feeling a gentle flutter, the first real movement of their daughter. Damien parted the blanket so she could rest her hand on his. Did you feel that? She nodded, eyes bright. She's saying hello. He placed his hand over hers, warmth radiating through both layers. The lights of the estate glimmered below, a sea of amber against the velvet night. Reyna leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. He tilted her chin upward and brushed a kiss across her forehead. Thank you for trusting me. Their silhouettes merged under storm-dark clouds, and for a fleeting moment, two former enemies discovered something more powerful than business deals or old grudges, a fragile, growing love, powered by the cadence of a tiny, unstoppable heartbeat. Reyna woke before dawn, heart hammering as rain tapped insistently against her window. The soft beep of the nursery monitor echoed in the dark, its gentle green light casting quivering shadows across the pale pink walls. Today was her quarterly check-in, a milestone both vital and terrifying. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed and placed a hand on her rounded belly, feeling the subtle flutter of life within. For a moment, the persistent ache of morning nausea faded, replaced by a fragile swell of hope. Yet beneath that hope simmered a growing unease, one she could no longer ignore. Pulling on a simple leggings and sweater set, Reyna paused at the suite's mirrored hallway. The elegant decor, velvet cushions, brushed silver accents, and linen curtains, felt suddenly alien, as though she were a stranger in a gilded cage. She squared her shoulders, inhaled deeply, and steeled herself. Today, she would demand answers from the man who had once seemed so caring, but whose recent words had shattered her trust. Damien's office door stood slightly ajar, the soft hiss of rain mingling with low, urgent voices inside. Reyna pressed a hand to the cool wood frame and listened. Damien sat behind his mahogany desk, immaculate suit, tie perfectly knotted, while his lawyer, Miss Sullivan, reviewed a contract. We've capped her liability, defined her obligations, and guaranteed confidentiality, the lawyer stated crisply. Damien's reply was chilling. Excellent. Remember, she's a contract. Nothing more. Her breath caught. A contract. Nothing more. The words echoed in her mind, reverberating like a blow to the chest. Unable to bear more, she slipped away before either of them noticed. Back in her suite, Reyna closed the door so hard the frame shuddered. She sank onto the chaise lounge, hand shaking as she cradled her belly. The promise of new life pulsed beneath her palm, yet despair pressed on her chest. She had believed Damien would honor their bond, respect her sacrifice, share her excitement, carry her through the dark hours. Instead, he had reduced her to a line in a ledger. She pressed her palms into her temples, closing her eyes against tears she refused to let fall. She vowed then to see this pregnancy through on her own terms. Once the baby arrived, she would leave, pocket the money, and rebuild her life far from this opulent prison. When Damien entered the sunroom that afternoon, she sat with her back to him, shoulders tense and eyes distant. He paused at the threshold, rain streaking the glass behind him. "Reyna," he said softly. She didn't turn. He came to sit beside her on the cream love seat, offering space and sincere regret. "I know you heard what I said to my lawyer." Her pulse thudded in her ears. She turned, meeting his eyes. "You sounded like you were talking about a car, not a person," she said, voice brittle. His face went pale. He began. She cut him off. "Don't. Just don't." His shoulders slumped, helplessness in every line. For the next 48 hours, their silence grew into a chasm. Damien sent messages, text, email, even a voicemail that ended with his raw apology, "I never meant to hurt you." Each notification sent her heart racing in panic, and each ping that went unanswered deepened his anguish. She attended her appointments alone, Dr. Macklin's concerned gaze following every tremble of her hand. At night, Reyna lay awake, clutching the contract in one fist, tracing the signature that bound her to a man who could dismiss her so easily. Every thunderclap outside mirrored the turmoil inside her. Vivian, Damien's sister, refused to let the rift stand. She organized a baby shower in the Drake Estate's grand ballroom, determined to replace tension with celebration. Reyna arrived in a soft blue wrap dress, fingers tightening around the fabric as she crossed beneath crystal chandeliers that scattered rainbows across the marble floor. Lavender ribbons, pink peonies, silver trays of canapes and cupcakes, everything whispered joy, but none of it reached her heart. Guests drifted in designer gowns, offering warm smiles and tinkling laughter. Damien circulated among them, comforting friends here, exchanging jokes there, but his eyes always flicked back to Reyna. When he offered her a cupcake, she took it in numb courtesy, tasting sweetness laced with regret. As the last guest said farewell, Reyna noticed a wicker basket wrapped in cellophane on a side table. A simple tag read, "For Reyna with love." Vivian guided her closer. "He asked me to give this to you," she said softly. Reyna bowed her head to hide the sudden flutter of anxiety. She excused herself and slipped into the powder room, its walls lined with mirrors that reflected her pale, anxious face. She peeled back cellophane and untied ribbons until she revealed an ivory envelope sealed with wax. Damien's neat, familiar handwriting spelled out her name. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Inside the private stall, Reyna broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Damien's handwriting danced across the page. "Reyna, please forgive my moment of weakness. When I spoke to my lawyer, fear and pride combined to make me say you were a contract, nothing more. That was never my truth. You have shown me compassion, courage, and strength beyond measure. Carrying our daughter, you have given me purpose, hope, and a reason to open my heart. I meant every single word of this letter, even as fear stole the other words from my lips. You are everything to me." Tears blurred her vision, and the paper trembled in her grasp. The betrayal she had felt twisted into a stirring of something else. Astonishment, maybe forgiveness, tinged with uncertainty. Summoning all her courage, Reyna emerged from the powder room and returned to the ballroom. The chatter hushed as she approached Damien, who stood near a marble fountain, his expression a mixture of hope and dread. He stepped forward. "Reyna." She held up the letter. "Then explain this," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Guests pressed back, watching as the gulf between them filled the room. Damien's hand hovered over the paper, reluctant to reach. She lifted her other hand. "Explain how you could call me nothing, then write this." Every eye in the room followed hers. Outside, the storm's roar grew louder. Taking a steadying breath, Damien closed the distance. "I meant every honest word in that letter," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Except when I called you nothing. Those are the only words I have ever regretted." The chandeliers pulsed with reflected light, casting dancing shadows across stunned faces. The weight of his confession settled on the silenced guests like a blanket of ice. Reyna's heartbeat thundered in her ears as the rain lashed the windows. Time stretched, each second drawn out, every detail sharpened. The flicker of candlelight, the hum of the silent crowd, the tremor in his outstretched hand. In that charged moment, their fragile world trembled between collapse and redemption, and every eye waited for her next breath, her next word. Reyna jolted awake in the dim glow of early morning, a surging pain ripping through her abdomen like a tidal wave. The nursery monitor's gentle hum was suddenly drowned by her own racing heartbeat. Outside, rain pounded the roof, and the wind rattled windows as though intent on tearing the house apart. She reached for her phone, hands trembling, and saw the blinking alert. "Contractions starting. Come immediately. Dr. Macklin." Her breath caught. She swung her legs out of bed, bare feet hitting the cool hardwood floor. Damien's side of the bed was empty, the crisp sheets undisturbed. Panic coiled in her chest. He was supposed to be here. She had counted on his presence, his steady hand, his whispered reassurances through each contraction. She stumbled into a robe, her mind racing back to her mother's lonely labor decades ago, when no one held her hand and no comforting voice spoke promises of strength. Reyna vowed, "Not this time." Down the corridor, she fumbled for the light switch. Pale hall lighting revealed framed sketches on the wall, her own drawings of the nursery, of their daughter's crib. She touched each frame as she passed, drawing strength from the life growing within. The pain struck again, fiercer, and she braced herself against the wall, eyes squeezed shut. Then she heard hurried footsteps, Dr. Macklin and two nurses rounding the corner in medical scrubs. "Reyna!" Dr. Macklin called, voice calm but urgent. "Gown quick, we need to get you settled." Reyna nodded, tears stinging her eyes as she let them guide her into the makeshift birthing suite, once a guest bedroom now equipped with monitors, and 4 stand and soft overhead lights. The nurses inserted an 4-drip and secured heart rate sensors around her belly. Each action blurred past her in a storm of pain and adrenaline. "Contraction in the hun," Dr. Macklin coached, and Reyna inhaled, clutching the bed rails as another wave crashed over her. She groaned, tears slipping unchecked. "Breathe," the doctor urged. "Breathe for the baby." Reyna tried, gasping in through her nose, out her mouth, mind focused on the next instruction, the next breath. She glanced at the empty doorway, mind shouting, "Where is he?" She watched her phone's dark screen, messages piling up unanswered. Then she remembered, Damien had flown to the Eastgate conference last evening. His private jet delayed, phone dead, out of reach. She pressed her forehead to the cool metal rail, heart fracturing. "I'm alone," she thought, panic rising. A memory surfaced, her mother's soft voice echoing through stale hospital corridors, promising, "You're not alone, my love." Reyna sucked in air, summoning that maternal courage. "I won't let history repeat," she whispered under her breath, and then push. The storm outside intensified. Thunder rattled the window panes like war drums. The lights flickered, then steadied. With each contraction, she felt as though her body might shatter, and yet, she found new reservoirs of strength. Nurses coached her, counting down each surge, their hands steady on her arms and shoulders. "2 more pushes," Dr. Macklin said, voice soft but firm. Then came a sudden, fierce moment of clarity, the baby's head crowned. Reyna's roar echoed off the walls as she summoned the last of her will. A final push, and the infant's cry pierced the air, a rich, urgent sound that cut through every fear. Reyna collapsed back onto the pillows, sobbing with relief and exhaustion as nurses hurried to clean and swaddle the newborn. A breathless pause followed. The storm outside fell to a hush. And then, from the corridor, the door flew open. Damien burst in, rainwater cascading from his coat, hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes were wide with panic and anguish. He knelt beside her, voice breaking. "Reyna, I'm here. I made it." He dropped his soaked coat to the floor and reached for her hand. Her tears blurred into a watery smile. "I thought you'd left me," she whispered, voice hoarse. He pressed his forehead to hers. "Never," he vowed. "Never again." Nurses placed their daughter, bundled in a soft pink blanket, into Damien's waiting arms. He cradled her gently, as though afraid she might vanish, and he whispered, "She's perfect. Aramara." Reyna reached out, brushing back a damp curl from her daughter's brow. "Hello, my love," she murmured, voice trembling with awe. They stayed like that for minutes that stretched into eternity. Father, mother, child, bound by the rawest depths of emotion. Outside, the storm abated. A fresh breeze rattled the leaves in the courtyard. It was as if the world itself paused to witness this new beginning. After the nurses cleaned up and checked vitals, they transferred Reyna and baby to the cozy postpartum suite. Damien hovered by her side as she rested against pillows, Amara nestled on her chest. He peeled away a damp blanket and suggested, "Skin to skin." Reyna nodded, exhaustion and wonder mingling in her eyes. Damien helped lift their daughter onto Reyna's bare skin. Amara's small hand curled around Reyna's finger, and her breathing slowed into contented coos. The intimacy, the warmth of newborn skin against hers, brought tears of gratitude to Reyna's eyes. A nurse arrived with discharge paperwork, care instructions, feeding schedules, follow-up appointments. Damien listened attentively and nodded. "We'll handle everything," he assured Reyna, brushing a kiss on her forehead. Reyna studied him, love and pride flooding her. "I couldn't have done this without you, even if you arrived a little late." He laughed softly. "Worth every second. I'll never leave your side again." He leaned in and kissed her lips, gentle and reverent. That afternoon, sunlight filtered through lace curtains onto the suite's pale walls. Damien arranged a small photo session with his phone on a tripod. "Ready?" he asked, voice soft. Reyna cradled Amara and turned toward him. "I'll do my best," she said, offering a tired but radiant smile. The timer clicked, and they captured their first family portrait, a snapshot of love forged in storm and sacrifice. As evening approached, they ventured onto the terrace. The estate's gardens, washed clean by rain, glittered under a pastel sky. Damien wrapped an arm around Reyna's shoulders, Amara sleeping quietly in a bassinet beside them. They watched twilight descend, two hearts beating in rhythm with their daughters. Reyna rested her head on Damien's chest. "We've crossed the hardest mile," she said. "Now comes the real journey." His fingers traced patterns on her arm. "Together," he replied, voice steady. "Every step, every challenge, together." Before the night ended, Reyna retrieved the original surrogacy contract, its ink now faded and meaningless. She held it in one hand and her daughter's birth certificate in the other. With a decisive tear, she shredded the contract, scattering fragments like petals across the polished floor. Damien watched, awe and relief shining in his eyes as the paper fell away. Their daughter stirred, a soft coo as she shifted in her mother's arms. Reyna held up a tiny finger. "Welcome, Amara," she whispered. Damien bent to place a kiss on his daughter's forehead. "This is only the beginning," he said, voice rich with hope. Amara's lullaby breaths filled the night as they stood beneath a sky streaked with stars. Inside, their home pulsed with new life, no longer a battleground of contracts and expectations, but a sanctuary of love, forged in the storm and sealed by a newborn's cry. Reyna blinked awake to the soft hum of hospital machinery and the gentle rustling of curtains. Dawn's pale light filtered through the window, illuminating the quiet room. In her arms lay Amara, wrapped in a gauzy pink blanket, breathing softly. At her side sat Damien, his gaze fixed on their daughter, a tender expression softening his usually stoic features. She traced her fingertip along Amara's tiny hand and glanced at Damien. "She's perfect," she whispered. Damien turned, his eyes glinting with emotion. "She's everything I never knew I needed." Reyna smiled, a warmth blooming in her chest. The past months had tested their courage, their trust, and their hearts. Now, they stood on the other side of fear, united by the life they had created together. He reached for her hand. "I owe you so much for bringing her into the world." Her gaze drifted to the doctor's discharge papers on the nightstand. "And I owe you for giving me back myself." Damien cocked his head. "How do you mean?" Reyna took a deep breath, recalling the hard edges she'd carried when she first arrived. "I was angry, guarded. I thought this was a transaction. But you showed me kindness, humor, and a willingness to listen. You let me be human, flaws and all." He squeezed her hand. "You taught me something too. That life isn't a contract. It's messy, unpredictable, and beautiful." Her heart swelled. Memories flickered. Their first handshake over the contract, the late-night talks during storms, the ultrasound's flicker dancing across the screen, those whispered promises amid thunder. They had grown from rivals to companions to something deeper, a bond neither expected. Damien leaned forward and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't want a child at first," he admitted, voice low. "I wanted a future. A future with you." Reyna's breath caught. She searched his eyes. "Future, with me?" He nodded. "Yes. With us." His expression grew serious. "Reyna Voss, will you stay? Not for the contract, not for the money, but for me." Tears welled in her eyes. She opened her mouth, then closed it, overcome. She felt the truth of his words resonate through every fiber of her being. "Yes," she whispered. "I will stay." They leaned together, foreheads touching in a quiet kiss of forgiveness and promise. Outside, the morning sun broke through clouds, rays spilling into the room like a benediction. Nurses arrived to check on their vitals. Dr. Macklin offered congratulations, then slipped away, leaving the new family alone. Damien stood and retrieved a small box from his pocket. He handed it to Reyna, who opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "I know it's early," Damien said, voice trembling, "but I want you to have this. As a symbol of what we're building." Reyna's hand shook as she lifted the ring. "Damien," she began. He smiled softly. "No pressure. Just a promise." Her tearful laugh filled the room. She placed the ring on her finger. "It's perfect." He slid it to the proper place and slipped a matching band onto Amara's tiny hand. "And for her too." They laughed together, the sound bright and free. The ring felt warm on her finger, a reminder of trust rekindled and love discovered. Later, they sat in the garden courtyard, Amara sleeping in a cradle beside them. They held hands, soaking in quiet moments. "Do you remember how scared we were?" Reyna asked. Damien nodded. "Every night before I fell asleep, I remembered the contract, the timeline, the trust issues." She nudged him playfully. "And yet here we are." He chuckled. "Here you are, teaching me to draw better, arguing over movies, making me feel things I thought were lost." Reyna leaned against him. "You make me feel safe." He kissed her temple. "And you remind me to laugh." They watched a pair of doves cooing on a low branch, symbolic of peace. Amara stirred, stretching tiny limbs. Damien lifted his daughter into his arms while Reyna cleaned her face with a soft cloth. They exchanged a look of shared wonder. As afternoon melted into evening, Reyna retreated to the veranda to sketch. She spread a charcoal pad across her lap and turned to capture Damien and Amara in one sweeping line. Her strokes were fluid, confident, an image of healing and hope. Damien watched her work, mesmerized. When she finished, she held up the sketch, his profile, knees drawn close, cradling their daughter, her eyes soft and alive. "It's beautiful," he said, voice thick. Reyna smiled. "It's us." They embraced again as dusk painted the sky in shades of lavender and rose. Nearby, the estate's lanterns flickered to life. It felt like the beginning of everything. That night, as they settled in the bedroom they would share, Damien tucked Amara into her bassinet. Reyna slipped under the covers beside him. He entwined his fingers with hers. "Good night, my family," he whispered. Reyna pressed her head to his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, strong, and true. "Good night," she murmured. "I love you." He kissed her hair. "I love you more." In the hush of early night, they drifted to sleep entwined, bound by the promises they had made and the life they now held. Outside, the stars winked through clear skies, silent witnesses to a new chapter, one neither contract nor fear could dictate, written instead with love's unbreakable ink. 3 months later, the Drake estate courtyard glowed under warm sunlight. A gathering celebrated Amara's first birthday. Friends and family mingled around a wooden table holding a pastel cake reading, "Amara turns 1." Multicolored balloons drifted gently above. Reyna, in a light sundress, helped Amara smear frosting across her cheeks. The toddler giggled, a sound that echoed joy. Guests cooed and snapped photos as Reyna wiped her daughter's face. Damien raised a glass of lemonade. "To laughter and messy moments," he toasted. Glasses chimed. Vivian laughed. "Only you two would host a backyard birthday like a gala." Reyna smiled at Damien. "To the fire that sparked our love." Their eyes met, warmth passing between them. They paused, hand in hand, marveling at how far they'd traveled, from cold strangers bound by contract to a family forged by love. Reyna felt Damien's steady heartbeat beneath her palm, a rhythm that matched her own. Silence settled around them, comfortable and sacred, as if the world held its breath to honor their journey. That evening, after guests departed, Reyna and Damien stood on the balcony cradling Amara. Fireflies danced in the garden below. Damien knelt before Reyna, heart pounding. Reyna Voss, you were my rival, my redemption, and the love I never expected. Will you marry me? Tears brightened Reyna's eyes. She knelt to embrace him. Yes, I will. Amar cooed. They laughed under the moonlight, petals drifting from nearby potted flowers. The next morning, they gathered close friends beneath a flowered arch for a simple ceremony. Reyna wore a flowing white dress, Damien in a light linen suit. Amara toddled between them, scattering rose petals. They exchanged genuine vows, to love beyond contracts, to nurture with kindness, to build a family bound by heart. After the ceremony, Dr. Macklin congratulated them with tears in her eyes, while Vivian presented Reyna with a small locket, the same pendant she'd gifted at Amara's birth. As they kissed, sunlight filtered through petals, and Reyna sketched their silhouette on a small pad. Her charcoal lines captured the moment, two figures leaning into each other, a child between them, love radiating. The drawing bore the title, The Man Who Burned and Healed Me, a testament to their journey and the fire that became love. As twilight deepened, they lingered under the flower arch, knowing no contract could ever define the love blossoming among them. The end. Love the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Brandon Tales family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.